Okay, councillors, welcome to our regular council meeting. Welcome to the people in the gallery and also welcome to the people on webcam. I declare the meeting open at 7:04. Can we all stand, please, for the national anthem?
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is God by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts, all beauty rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains that let us sing, advance Australia fair. Beneath the radiance of the cross, we'll toil with hearts and hands to make this commonwealth of ours renowned of all the lands. For those who've come across the seas, we've boundless plains to share. With courage let us all combine to advance Australia fair. In joyful strains that let us sing, advance Australia fair.
We for an opening prayer from Pastor Dan Watts from St. Susie Baptist Church. Pastor, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, councillors and everybody. Just before I pray, I just want to extend, first of all, my gratitude and thanks on behalf of our church, St. Susie Baptist Church, to the Georges River Council, in particular, Councillor Catras and Councillor Borg for their support and donation to our church recently. We very much appreciate it. Let me lead us in prayer. Well, our Heavenly Father, we come before you now and we thank you for the great and almighty God that you are. We thank you for your son, Jesus, and the second chance of life that each and every one of us have been blessed with in and through him. We thank you, Lord, for the opportunity it is to serve you, to serve our local community. And with recent events in mind and with politics at the forefront of our minds here today, I pray for each of the councillors here that they would come to look to your son, Jesus, ultimately for the example of leadership that he provides us with. It is a leadership that is governed by humility, service, and ultimately governed by love. And I pray for the Georges River Council as a whole, that it will be known for its desire to love and humbly serve the local community around us with the honesty and integrity. Father, I also pray for tonight's meeting in particular, that your blessing may be upon it. And as each item is discussed and debated, I pray that you would guide each conversation and discussion, and that the outcome would ultimately serve the benefit of the wider community. May there be an air of other-centered approach here tonight, and may your hand of blessing guide everyone who is here. Ultimately, Lord, we know that we need your wisdom in life, and I pray that everyone here will look to your wisdom and not their own. May you bless each and every one of us here tonight and their wider families, and I pray all these things in your Son's wonderful and incredible name. Amen.
Thank you. Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Acknowledgement of country. The council acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which this meeting is being held as that of the Bidikal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Apologies. I have one apology from Councillor Luke Konjarski. Are there any other apologies? I don't think so. Everybody's here. Okay. Could I have a motion to accept those apologies and grant a leave of absence? Councillor O'Meara, seconded by Councillor Lansbury. All those in favour say aye. All those against say no, and I declare the motion carried. Notice of live streaming of council meeting. Staff and public are reminded that this meeting is being recorded for minute-taking purposes and is also being webcast live on council's website. This recording will be made available on council's website. The order of business is as shown in the agenda. The code of meeting practice. Council's code of meeting practice prohibits the electronic recording of meetings without the express permission of council. And we're now going to disclosures of interest. I have a disclosure from Councillor Peter Marnie with regards to NM 047-22, acquisition of Glen Lee. He's a member of the Oakley Flora and Fauna. It's a non-significant, non-pecuniary. And then also from myself to question with notice number 2022. I have a pecuniary interest for the reason the report makes reference to the local centre strategy, which also includes the Ramsgate Centre. I'm part owner of a property in Ramsgate Centre, and although the property is located on the Bayside Council side, I'm taking the precautionary measure. Are there any other disclosures, councillors?
Councillor, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor,
yeah,
yes.
Just with regards to the discretionary fund, I'm the patron of Cogra Historical Society, which is mentioned in that report, and it's a non-significant, non-pecuniary disclosure.
Thank you, Councillor Green. That can be recorded. Thank you. Public participation. We have 7 speakers registered for tonight's meeting. The first speaker will be in person. Speakers 3, 5, 6 and 8 will be remote. Speakers 4 and 7 will have their submissions read out by staff. I would remind the speakers that speakers have 3 minutes time limit. Speakers are subject to the provisions of Council's Code of Conduct when addressing the meeting. The first sound you hear indicates that you have 1 minute remaining. At the second sound, please conclude your comments. The first speaker is Ms. Michelle Stevens on Notice of Motion 044-22, review of fines for heavy or long vehicle truck parking in built-up areas. Ms. Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors and everyone else who's here. I'm here tonight to speak in support of Councillor Symington's motion MN 0044-22, which refers to a review of fines for heavy or long vehicle trucks parking in built-up areas. According to the GRC heavy or long vehicle parking rule, a vehicle with a gross vehicle mass of more than 4.5 tonnes or 7.5 metres long or longer may park in a built-up area for a maximum of 1 hour unless picking up or dropping off goods, or as long as permitted on timed parking signs or the vehicle is a bus. There are no signs required for this rule. The fine for not abiding by this rule is currently $117. I'm a resident of Hurstville, living in a small street situated between Patrick and Dora Streets, 2 busy roads. My street is often used as a rat run to avoid the lights at the corner of Patrick and Stony Creek roads. As my street is narrow, if 2 cars are parked either side of the road, it is only possible for 1 vehicle to travel along the road at any one time. This type of access has been manageable. However, just before Christmas, we had a semi-trailer parking on the corner of my street. This semi-trailer, with just the cab, weighs 8.5 tonnes and is a lot wider than a car, and of course weighs a lot more when it's parked there with a load. Where the semi parks, due to its size, a driver's view is impeded. When exiting my street into Patrick Street, you need to be over on the right-hand side of the road to be able to pass the semi. Then turning into my street from Patrick Street, you need to stop to ensure nobody is coming up my street prior to turning right. Only a regular user of this street would be aware of this hazard and be prepared. The actions required to avoid this semi have the potential of causing a head-on collision. The first time action was taken by rangers to get this truck up our local street, the driver decided to park the vehicle in his front yard. In the process of doing this, he broke the Telstra pit on the footpath and created a pedestrian hazard, which 5 months later has still not been repaired by Telstra. After this incident, he was back on the street, at times putting the left-hand front wheels on the nature strip and destroying the grass. I've been keeping a log of the movement of this vehicle for several months, and there's hardly a day where it's not parked on our street, outside the driver's property, overnight, or for several days. It can be there as a tractor cab only, or loaded with long trailer or liquid tank container, which could be used to transport dangerous goods. After again reporting this vehicle and providing my log, council parking rangers have been monitoring the vehicle. It appears, however, a measly $117 fine, issued many times, is scoffed at by the driver, and so the vehicle continues to be parked in the dangerous position on the street. I'm concerned about the threat to lives the parking of heavy or long vehicles on our local streets is causing. After speaking with the local highway patrol, who regularly patrol Patrick Street near where this vehicle is parked, I've been told they are aware of at least 50 heavy or long vehicles illegally parked in the Hurstville area. And as the people responsible for the vehicles find the fine of the small amount of $117 easier to cop than trying to find appropriate parking, they pay the fine, or they probably don't actually pay the fine. The police officer then went on to say that unfortunately, until there is a serious road incident caused as a result of the way this vehicle is parked, there is nothing they can do. Well, I say it's time to do something about this illegal, often dangerous parking of these heavy or long vehicles. This action involves a hefty increase to the current fine of the $117 amount to an amount that is going to make the owners of these vehicles have second thoughts about parking on the streets of GRC. I don't want my family or friends to be the victims of a serious accident just because council won't get serious about this issue. And by the way, he's been parked there for 3 days since Saturday with his load, which is probably about 5 lengths of a normal car on our street. So there you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Stevens. The next person is going to address us remotely. It's happening. We just have to wait for a couple of minutes. Now, do we then go straight onto all those things?
Then we have procedural motion, yes.
Then we have
Procedural motion to
to procedural motion. Okay, which one's the ones that are going to read out? Julian Letorowski. Was that, have you got that? 3? Yeah. Hold on. Number 3. 6. Okay. Councillors and community, we do have a technical problem with regards to getting the speakers to address us remotely, but we do have 2 which we can have read out by one of our council officers. The first one is Gary Miller. It's Notice of Motion 44-22, review of fines for heavy vehicles and heavy vehicle parking in built-up areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll read this submission now from Mr. Gary Miller. Submission to Georges River Council meeting 23 May 2022 in relation to Notice of Motion 044-22, review of fines for heavy or long vehicle truck parking in built-up areas. This submission is made in support of Councillor Symington's motion in relation to the review of fines for heavy or long vehicle truck parking in built-up areas. I have been a resident of Talawalla Street, Beverly Hills since 2006. My property is opposite the Black Forest Reserve and the Crescent Kingsgrove. Following the relocation of several businesses from the Crescent around 2018, there has been an increase in the number of heavy vehicles parking for longer than an hour in this area. Many of these vehicles tend to arrive later in the afternoon and depart in the early hours of the morning, typically around 4 a.m. to 6 a.m, often idling for 15 minutes or more prior to departure. Most of the vehicles have no connection to the businesses that operate in the Crescent. I have made many approaches to council since that time, and the actions taken to council have been of some benefit. However, the current fine of $117 is not a sufficient deterrent to truck drivers. Despite council's actions, residents continue to experience sleep disturbances from the noise generated by these trucks. The noise is particularly marked when refrigerated trucks park overnight and leave their refrigeration unit running all night, with the constant hum being able to be clearly heard inside my house. I understand that in April 2020 that council's traffic section was looking to determine the most appropriate action to be taken to prevent illegal truck parking in at the Crescent Kingsgrove. I note the only recommendations that I am aware of about truck parking in this area is the recent proposal considered at the meeting of the Local Traffic Advisory Committee on 3 May 2022 to install parking restriction signs along a section of Vanessa Street, Kingsgrove. While I fully support the proposal, it is not clear if council has considered the unintended consequences of these restrictions that could see the trucks that currently park in Vanessa Street move into the Crescent. In fact, some of these trucks used to park in the Crescent. An increase in the fines with increased penalties for repeat offenders would be a useful tool to assist council in combating this continuing problem. In addition, council needs to develop an overall strategy to address this issue, which could include signs banning the overnight parking of heavy vehicles, in brackets see regulatory sign R5-41-3L, close brackets, installing of more physical barriers to discourage parking in areas designed as angled parking spots, increased patrols by enforcement officers, especially outside business hours, and direct approaches to truck owners who regularly park illegally to encourage them to park legally. I would encourage all councillors to support this motion. Gary Miller, Talawalla Street, Beverly Hills.
Thank you, Neil. You might want to stay there because we're going to go on to Julie Nestorovsky. Again on the same matter, review of fines for heavy vehicles, notice of motion 024-22. Thank you, Mr. Tregler.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a submission on behalf of Julie Nestorovsky, a submission to Georges River Council meeting 23rd of May 2022 in relation to notice of motion 044-22, reviews of fines for heavy vehicles or long vehicles truck parking in built-up areas. This submission has been made in support of Councillor Symington's motion in relation to the review of fines for heavy or long vehicle truck parking in built-up areas. For years now, myself and the other residents of Talawalla Street, Beverly Hills, have been battling and suffering from the constant noise, sleep disruption and damage heavy vehicles and long vehicles are causing as they park in the Crescent Kingsgrove opposite Talawalla Street and Black Forest Reserve. These heavy/long vehicles park in the Crescent Kingsgrove and overstay the 1 hour legal time limit. They leave or arrive at very late or early hours in the morning. Most vehicles will leave approximately between the hours of 4 to 6 a.m, which is disturbing myself and other residents on a daily basis. They sit there with the trucks idling for over 10 minutes. The constant noise and disruption from these legally parked heavy, long vehicles is becoming a very big concern. Most of these vehicles have no connection to the surrounding businesses. Most of the time it has been the same repeat offenders parking their trucks in this area. Refrigerated trucks park overnight, usually arriving late at night and leave the refrigeration units running all night with the constant humming, rattling and vibrations being heard inside my house. This noise will wake myself and household on almost every occasion. While I do strongly support the proposal, I would like to know what will happen with the parking issue in the Crescent Kingsgrove to stop these trucks also parking here, as some of the heavy vehicles that do parking on Vanessa Street were previously parking in the Crescent. To help with this issue, an increase in fines with increased penalties may slowly deter these trucks away from this area and may make them consider using appropriate and legal areas to park. But we still believe that other strategies are required to discourage parking. For example, installation of physical barriers or marked parking bays, installation of signs and increased patrols by enforcement officers. Thank you, and I'll encourage all councillors to support this motion. Julie Nestorowski, Telemola Street, Beverly Hills.
Thank you, Mr. Treadwell. I believe the General Manager has an announcement to make. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to apologise to everyone. We're about to have to take everyone offline for a couple of minutes, then log them back in. We've got a problem with Microsoft Teams at the moment, and we just want to make sure that the meeting still keeps running smoothly and that the participants who need to still speak can have that opportunity to speak. So if you can just bear with me again, I apologise for the disruption, but we need to go offline for a couple of minutes, then get everyone back online again.
Thank you. Councillors, we can actually continue now with the meeting. It's all been rebooted and it's now effective. The next speaker we have is Ms. Megan Argent on notice of motion 47-22, acquisition of Glen Lee. Is Ms. Argent on the available?
Hello.
Hello, Ms. Argent? Hello, Ms. Argent.
Yes,
You can address the council now.
thank you. Thank you to Georges River Council for its continued acknowledgement of Glen Lee as a significant historical and ecological asset. And thank you to all the Georges River councillors and Councillor Marnie for this and other motions that have been raised to advocate for saving Glen Lee. And I'd also like to thank Mark Coure for his acknowledgement of the extraordinary values of Glen Lee. Although ideally the ultimate outcome would be for Glen Lee to be added to the Georges River National Park, the state government has made it clear that purchasing Glen Lee must be a joint contribution, including all levels of government. The council and the state and federal governments need to come to the table and navigate a way forward to provide the funding. David Coleman, federal member for Banks, has said in a meeting that federal government could contribute towards infrastructure. According to the GRC Local Infrastructure Contributions Plan, there is $5.55 million allocated for a new community hub in the western part of the LGA. And Glen Lee is in the vicinity of the investigation area for this new community hub, according to the local strategic planning statement. This is in addition to $2.22 million for a new community centre in Peakhurst Park and the old park library being repurposed as community space, which leaves a large sort of glaring hole in community facilities on the Lugano Peninsula. And the logical choice would be a heritage site protecting the river, which has the only foreshore space people can sit on the grass and enjoy access to the river, with sheds ready to be repurposed into a men's shed and kayak hire, functioning garden beds for community gardens, and a destination for 3 active transport initiatives. The community is urging Georges River Council, state government and federal government to sit down and make the vision a reality. In closing, I would like to just ask if we could consider the following points and if they have merit. Although our LGA is under open space overall, I am aware that there is a priority for open space in other wards, and that has also been made clear in correspondence from Council. However, the Hurstville Section 94 Development Contributions Plan 2012, which is effective 19th of July 2017, indicates that $3,264,897 was allocated for a land acquisition priority project in Mortdale. As of September last year, 4 years later, the funds had not been spent. So this is just an example only, but what I'm trying to say is, will the indicated priority open space in other wards be purchased and acquired in 4 years with the challenges of opportunity and compulsorily acquiring open space in high density areas, or will some remain unacquired? Sort of not saying I'm an expert, but if open space is the only argument stopping Glen Lee from being saved from the council's end, respectively, it would be terrible to lose Glen Lee for open space that will not even be acquired, effectively losing Glen Lee for nothing. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Argent.
Thank you.
Hello? Yeah. We now go to Mr. Adrian Polhill, who'll be talking on recycling of expanded polystyrene and the Oatley Tacoma walkway. Is Mr. Polhill? Mr. Polhill, you can address the council. The only issue that we have is that as you're speaking on 2 items, you'll only be allowed 3 minutes for both.
Sorry, for both. Okay, so can I? Okay, so I'll talk on the Oatley walkway very quickly and just say that anything that the council can do to push along the upgrade of the walk and the right and the cycle path is urgently needed, because there's so many people use it, and it is getting quite dangerous there from time to time. So I urge you to follow up with Councillor Mort on the motion and do whatever you can as quickly as you can to improve that particular walkway. That's all I've got to say on Councillor Mort's motion. More importantly, on the other motion put forward by Councillor Marnie, expanded polystyrene is an absolute disaster in terms of the pollution of our environment and our waterways. It's about time that our council took the lead or followed Randwick City Council's lead and implement a recycling service for expanded polystyrene as soon as possible. It's not difficult. I've actually visited one of the suppliers of some equipment, and that equipment doesn't take up very much space and can be easily installed in one of our depots here in the LGA. And the really good thing is that the council can earn up to $550 a tonne by selling the compacted expanded polystyrene back to that particular supplier for reusing in things like custom-made plastic woods and plastic seats, etc. So you can save an awful lot in terms of landfill costs. So it's a brilliant idea put forward by Councillor Marnie, and I urge you to look into it as soon as possible, because I've been involved in many cleanups along the river, and the amount of polystyrene that comes through and is picked up by volunteers is astronomical, as you may well know. So as soon as you can, follow this one up. It's a really easy one to fix and great for the environment and great for the biodiversity, because some of those very small particles will end up in our fish and our bird life. So urgent action is required, and I believe it's not difficult to implement this. So thank you very much. Any questions, anybody there, any of the councillors?
No, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Polhill. You make very good points. Yes, now we will go to Mr. Esmond Cho. Notice of motion 42-2. Congratulations to council staff on our journey, our stories exhibition. Mr. Charles. Should be on. Mr. Chow, are you online? Hello? Hello, Mr. Chow? Esmond? Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Chow. Mr. Chow?
Yes, hi.
Hey, you can address the council now. Thank you.
Okay, hold on a second. Okay, can I start now?
Please start.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Esmond Cho, and I am the Managing Director of 2CR Chinese radio station. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you all tonight. First of all, I want to echo Councillor Liu's motion and pay my respect to council staff on our journey, our stories exhibition. The importance of preservation and exploration of the history of Chinese Australian immigrants has reached a new height, as we have reached a stage to settle down and appreciate and reflect our identities as part of the Australian Chinese community. Established in 1994, 2CR Chinese radio station is the first 7 days, 24 hours radio station, which is broadcasted in Chinese. It has provided a much needed information outlet and also an entertainment outlet for new Chinese immigrants who need a slight buffer, who have just moved to Australia. And now, as the operator of 2CR Radio, after years of working and communicating with audiences and some community organizations, I realized that it is so important for us to trail back the footsteps of what the Chinese Australian immigrants has so far achieved for the community. Hence, we have created this original program, Another Place, Another Story, by interviewing prominent Chinese community leaders to share their inspiring life experience, how to overcome obstacles and difficulties, whether it be a brand new and different environment, language, or even culture. And eventually, how did they forge their legacies? We see it as a way to record and honor what they have done for us. So when I've heard Councillor Liu, who is one of our guests of the program, mention the exhibition, Our Journey, Our Stories, I'm very happy and honored to be able to contribute to this project, as the exhibition echoes very well with our intention of the radio program. We are more than happy to provide as much media support as we could. And I think as a media outlet today, especially as ethnic media, we play an important role to become the bridge between council and the local community. Therefore, I offer my sincere thanks to the council, Councillor Liu, and everyone involved in this project, that we can participate in a culture building project for the local Australian Chinese community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We now need, well, that's the end of our addresses to the council. We now need a procedural motion for the order of business. Councillor Amir.
Move that we suspend standing orders and move to procedural motion.
And basically, from what I've got here, the first one is the notice of motion, review of fines for heavy or long vehicles. The second one is the acquisition of Glen Lee. The next one is recycling and expanded polystyrene. And the third one is the Oakley Tacoma Walkway, and the next one is congratulations, Our Journey, Our Stories. Thank you. Now, moved by Councillor.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Amir, seconded by Councillor Symington. All those in favour say aye. Aye. I declare it carried unanimously, and we will go to Councillor Symington. Review of fines for heavy or long vehicles, truck parking in built-up areas. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Symington, seconded by Councillor Elmere.
Thank you.
Councillor Simon, would you like to talk to your motion?
Well, firstly, I have an amendment that I submitted to council officers today. I just want to check that E is up there, because I'll read it out for the councillors as well. So I'm amending my motion to include Part E, that the General Manager submit a report to Council which identifies suitable locations within the local government area for the provision of overnight parking for heavy, long vehicles. The report is to address appropriate on-road and any other suitable locations, the process to be followed to create such parking, and any support available through the state government.
Councillor Elmere, are you happy with that amendment?
Okay.
Thank you.
Firstly, I'd like to thank the speakers in support of the motion tonight, Michelle, Gary and Julie. They've been severely impacted by heavy vehicles parking in their areas. You've listened to them and how it's impacted on their quality of life. In my previous term, I brought a similar motion to council, which was supported unanimously, but the representations made to the minister responsible did not result in any change to the road rules. As a recap, the only enforcement tool that council officers have is a $117 fine. I repeat, $117, 2 packets of cigarettes if they park there for more than 1 hour on a residential street. Council officers put in massive amounts of time and effort. It's literally a cat and mouse game. We need an updated tiered penalty system that has teeth. Council officers literally have one arm tied behind their back. Updating the noise control regulation to include noise from vehicles over 4.5 tonnes and idling for a certain length of time will stop noise reverberating throughout the neighbourhood, causing sleep disturbances, anger and frustration. As Julie mentioned, Like, how would you all feel at 4 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday that you get woken up at that time? And she told me she's pregnant, you know, with another child because she has little children at home. I mean, that's just debilitating to have to go through that. These changes to the Environment Operations Regulation will provide council officers with another enforcement tool so they can afford affected residents more protection. That's what they need, protection. Previous representations to the former Environment Minister were again not supported. Something needs to give, because since 2018 this problem has escalated, and now as a Hurstville Ward councillor I'm regularly receiving emails for residents that live in Beverly Hills, Kingsgrove and Hurstville. The despair in their voices when I tell them about the ridiculously low fines and limited EPA protection is heartbreaking. Councillors, I decided to also add Part E because even though from the previous motion, council officers did investigate providing some parking in, I think it's the Mortdale industrial area, but that didn't work out. So I thought we'll give it another crack and see if something else can be arranged, possibly with state government assistance. I hope that is forthcoming. Now tonight in the, when I go to the Assets and Services Committee meeting, in those traffic minutes, there's actually a recommendation from the Traffic Committee to install rear curb parking in Vanessa Street on the southern side for vehicles under 6 metres in length. And that's a direct result of heavy vehicles parking in that area. I've driven by and had a look, and it's, I mean, that area is being destroyed, and those vehicles are regularly parking there, and it's directly impacting on the residents that live in that area. And it's also, I've heard that there are complaints from local businesses. So the recommendation approved by the Traffic Committee is really the only effective way to eradicate the problem there. But as Gary Miller said, you fix that problem, then the trucks are going to move somewhere else. So there really has to be effective tools. There has to be the fines have to be increased with the tiered system, and also there has to be some parking areas in industrial areas. I know lots of holding parking areas have diminished over the years, but with these trucks avoiding tolls, not wanting to pay money, I mean, circumstances have changed. There needs to be a collaborative approach where we get together with state government and try and work this out, because it's going to get worse. So I hope you support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Symington. Councillor Meir, as the seconder, did you want to say anything?
Mr. Mayor, I think this is a great motion. I think, yeah, putting aside all the hyperbole, but also the general gist of this motion is important for our residents, because we've been receiving emails, and I'm sure many of my colleagues around the Horseshoe have been receiving emails from residents regarding trucks being parked in their area. Now, the critical thing is that these are, as Ms. Stevens was mentioning earlier, it's the 4.5 tonnes and over trucks. Now, as far as I'm concerned, like, anyone who owns a truck that is that large should really have a yard and park it there. And I very much welcome the increased fine if that was a solution. But we definitely need to start looking after this issue, which is becoming more and more, because obviously there are many people within our local government area that are probably business owners, and given everything that's gone on, it still doesn't qualify that they should be parking these large trucks in residential streets. I'm not sure if you know, asking the state government to find us solutions is the right way, but there's no harm in searching for that or asking for it. But it definitely is a private matter that, you know, these owners of these trucks should really be parking in the yards. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meir. Has anyone? I won't take any more for, but I will take. Sorry, Councillor.
I was going to ask a question.
Symington.
Oh, sorry. I was going to ask a question.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify something. I wasn't asking them to provide the solution, but work collaboratively with council to come up with one. Thank you.
Councillor Symington, I will take, and I will take a, I'll take a question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a question, just to clarify something for my own mind, to the Director of Assets and Infrastructure, whose area is responsible for this. My understanding is, to the Director, that trucks are in fact allowed to park in industrial areas, and I just want to clarify that before making a comment on that.
Mr. Latter.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Green is correct. Trucks are allowed to park in industrial areas. It's the residential areas that we're concerned with at the moment.
Just to follow up on that, because the Crescent is obviously in an industrial area, and the reason I bring this, and Councillor Simons to be well aware, because when she was a Peakhurst Ward councillor, I was often on the case outside our own depot, where trucks park opposite the Ken Rosewell Centre on that double yellow line, and also the one down in near the railway yard there at Oatley, where a truck used to park consistently with one wheel over the gutter just before you get to Oatley Parade there at the roundabout. The $117 was obviously having no impact. My concern is that, are there any measures that can be put in place where there's industrial areas, particularly on the periphery of those industrial areas, where a council can take other measures so that we don't get the knock-on effect? For instance, if you drive along Vanessa Street, where they're talking about, or the Crescent, I should say, the Vanessa Street into Commercial Road there, where we're talking about, you can still park on the other side of the road outside the front of the factories. So we've just got to be concerned about that knock-on effect. Otherwise, Councillor Symington's efforts, which are exemplary and fully support, we just won't leave those. So can you just clarify what other things could be taken?
Mr. Mayor, there are a number of measures that can be undertaken. For example, outside of the Carlton Depot on Planthurst Road, what we've done is we've done time parking for heavy vehicles. So they need to move on before the day starts, and they can return after the day is finished. So I think the hours there are between 7 and 6. They need to be out by 7 and they can return after 6. So there are a number of other measures we can take, depending on the area that we're actually talking about, and depending on, I guess, the density of development and industrial businesses around that area.
Thank you, Mr. Latter. Councillor Jamieson, are you speaking against it?
No, I just had a question.
You had a question? Fine, thank you. A question.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, it might be Andrew again, sorry. Just a question. Julie mentioned something about physical barriers, and is that like putting it so in the parking area so people, longer trucks can't park, or?
Mr. Latter, I think you might be able to answer that question. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Jamieson, I'm not sure what you're referring to in terms of physical barriers. There are a number of treatment measures that we can use. Councillor Symington mentioned the rear to curb parking. That was designed from preventing cars parking however they want to, for example. So it's really just about, I guess, formalising the parking in areas to ensure that we prevent any of that illegal activity moving forward.
Thank you.
Has anyone got any objections to this motion? If there are no objections, I'll put it. All those in favour say aye. All those against say no. I declare it carried unanimously. And now we'll go to notice of motion 47-22, acquisition of Glenlee, a notice of motion by Councillor Money. Thank you, Councillor Money. Would you like to, is there a seconder?
Second. I'll second.
I've got Councillor Lansbury seconded.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion acknowledges the commitment of the New South Wales Government Ministers Mark Curry MP, Rob Stokes MP and James Griffin MP to the preservation of Glenlee, which is now temporarily safeguarded by heritage order, and calls on the state government to advise on what current funding programs are now available for the purchase of the property with view to incorporating it into the George River National Park. I give credit to the Acting General Manager, Director and staff for the continuing assistance, and to everyone within our LGA, particularly the Friends of Glenlee, and beyond who have been campaigning tirelessly for the preservation of this culturally and environmentally significant site. That's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lansbury, did you want to say anything to this? Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll just add to Councillor Marnie's words and to say that my view has always been I think that the state and federal government are best placed to purchase this property, and I support Councillor Marnie's motion today that we contact them again and seek their support to purchase it.
Thank you, Councillor Lansbury. Is there any objection to this motion? If there are no objections, we've had 2 for. I'll put it. All those in favour say aye. All those against say no. I declare it carried unanimously, and we'll now go to Councillor Mort Oatley to Como Walkway. Councillor Mort. Seconded by.
I think.
Sorry.
I think Councillor Lansbury was going to second this. That's okay. Yeah. Okay. I just want to commend the staff for continuing to pursue the matter with Transport New South Wales. The motion calling for the report with a timeline of completion and design work is now 6 months ago. The motion is really to call for our local state member Mark Curry to make representation on behalf of the community so that the upgrade can progress further. The walkway itself is a real hazard. It really needs to be looked at very, very soon. There's parts of the walkway that are dropping down the side of the embankment. I've been onto the council before I became councillor regarding this pathway that has all sorts of hazards with lumps and bumps, and with the pathways lifted up with tree roots and whatnot. But there's also now an extra hazard because we have Sydney Water that are doing something through the pipeline right along the side of the pathway, and we now have their machinery, heavy machinery, are causing a lot of mud to slide onto the actual pathway that's creating another hazard for pedestrians and cyclists and whatever. So I'd like also to thank Adrian Polehill for speaking on this tonight. So if we can get a timeline and to start and completion from Transport New South Wales, maybe Mark Curry can look into that for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Mayor, did you want to say anything to this? No. I'm happy to take one more. Oh, Councillor Simon.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a question to the Director, Mr. Latta.
Mr. Latta?
Yeah, Mr. Latta. Could Mr. Latta please explain the degree of responsiveness that Transport for New South Wales provides council in matters such as the Oatley Como Walkway?
Thank you, Mr. Latta.
Mr. Mayor, late last year we actually met with a range of different departments from Transport for New South Wales to talk about, how we actually move forward and progress this. This year it's been a little bit quieter, so we haven't had a great deal of information coming back, despite the fact that we have been following up with them constantly throughout the first 6 months of the year.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Latta. Does anyone want to address this issue? Councillor Lansbury, I will take the floor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, thank you to Councillor Mort for getting this back on the agenda, and for Mr. Polehill for speaking. Well, I'm planning to speak to it tonight. This is something that it's an incredibly well-used pathway, and anybody that uses it will know that it's definitely needs some repairing. I remember walking across there one day with my sister and a friend, and Councillor Mort flew past on her bike while she was training for one of her Iron Women events. It's a very well-used pathway, and it needs to be upgraded. And during the lockdown period last year, when it was shut from both ends, so we couldn't escape from Georges River over into Sutherland. I remember speaking with the Director Latta at the time.
Yeah, but we're in hard lockdown, Councillor Elmere. I spoke with Director Latta back then about we approached the Transport for New South Wales authorities and whoever else we needed to see if we could get it moving, because it was a perfect time to get it done. And he had those conversations, and unfortunately these things do move at a glacial pace, as we often know, with state government departments, and some work had been done, as Councillor Maud had mentioned, but it's just timely that we move forward with it. It's so well used, and moving into winter, I suppose there might be, the weather has been very prohibitive with rain, etc., and has slowed the works down, but we just need to get it fixed. It's a beautiful location, and it's such a great stretch of walkway that families, cyclists, pedestrians use, and it just needs to be fixed. It's very timely. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mainsbury. Do we have questions, or do we have any objections to this motion? None. I'll put it. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against say no. I declare the motion carried unanimously. I owe Councillor Marnie an apology. Yours was supposed to come straight after Glenn Lee. So now we've got your notice of motion regarding the recycling of expanded polystyrene, moved by Councillor Marnie, seconded by Councillor Jamieson. Thank you. Councillor Marnie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Polystyrene is an insidious material which is not biodegradable, and a vast amount of it, which doesn't take up scarce space in limited landfill, ends up in our waterways, harms fish and other creatures, and creates an unsightly litter problem along the Georges River. At the moment, there are very few facilities within the metropolitan area where residents can dispose of polystyrene, and unfortunately the closest ones to our LGA are in Botany and Lidcombe. The good news is that polystyrene can be recycled and can actually provide a revenue stream to council. I thank the director and staff for their assistance here, and resident Mr Polhill for his strong advocacy in this matter, and look forward to Georges River eventually adopting this important recycling initiative, which will set an important environmental example for other councils. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. The second of Councillor Jamieson, did you want to say anything? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to say these are great initiatives, and thank you very much, Councillor Marnie, for presenting, and I think it's great that we can go forward with environmental recommendations. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Councillor Jamieson. Are there any questions or any objections to this motion? None. I'll put it. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against say no. I declare the motion carried unanimously. And now we go to the notice of motion 42-22. Congratulations to council staff. Our journey, our stories. Councillor, Councillor, you've moved it. Just for the sake of what do you call it, procedure, I would prefer if the person that I will select when it comes to moving and second is the one that puts their light on. So hands, yelling, I won't accept. Thank you. So, thank you, Councillor Smith. That's a good thing to do. Councillor Liu, it's your motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose I would like to move this motion is as two things. Firstly, I want to congratulate council's officers under the leadership of the acting director for community and cultural, Miss Christy Dodd, and the manager Thomas Kuritz, to put everything together to have the chance for this exhibition in front of the public. The second, that the council thanks China Radio Network, which is 2CR, for their support and promotion of council's journey and the story exhibition. Like Mr. Esmond Cho mentioned just now, this exhibition, as far as I know from the acting director, the council officers has been planning this exhibition for a year. If I recall back to, I think 5 to 6 years ago, one of the local residents who is the Dam Bank parents contact me about she found out a lot of these kind of cultural collections in her basement. She wants to donate to council. So that's why it started to collect those things. So I'm so happy to see after years of preparation and a year efforts from the officers, and this exhibition finally could, been put up in front of the public. So that's why I wanted to thank their effort. And the purpose of this is really to reflect the Chinese Australian. The history is really part of the multicultural history. So that's why I think that's not the stop. I think that's the beginning. That's an ongoing record for the future. More stories are coming in. So thank you so much for the other councillors to support my motion. Thank you.
Councillor Smurley, did you want? I would like Councillor Lu to consider an amendment. There's a part A and there's a part B, thanking the radio, part A. Council congratulates council officers for their outstanding efforts. Actually, no, you've already mentioned that, but I do want to say something because I did attend the opening of our journey, our stories exhibition, and I actually did address the people that were there. In my address, I actually indicated how important it was that that people of different nationalities and different origins respect their traditions and their culture, and they can pass those traditions and culture onto their offspring and onto their children. It's important that they do pass those traditions and those cultural characteristics, because the generations will be able to enjoy their origins. The important thing that I'm trying to get at is this: it's really very important to acknowledge the fact that people from different countries and different areas who make their home in Australia also provide a colour and richness that adds to our multicultural nation. We have the benefit of being able to enjoy different foods, different lifestyles, different cultural, different dances, the whole lot. And I think it's rather important that we acknowledge this is what makes, and it's essential that it makes up our Australian nation, and people recognise throughout the world that we have a success story. And the success story is we're able to attract people from different nations and make our nation a very rich country in terms of enjoyment and in terms of being able to involve ourselves in those special characteristics. I must admit, I was very enthused by the exhibition. There was a lot of information. There was a lot of colour. It was also interesting to actually read about things like the White Australia policy. When people from overseas came to Australia, the White Australia policy prohibited people from various nations from actually becoming Australian citizens. For instance, the one thing that got to me was the fact that you had to do a language test, but the language test, the language that they picked could come from any country. It wasn't just English. It could come from. We may give you a language test in Spanish, for instance, or in German, or something like that. So it's obviously directed to actually keeping people out of Australia. And unfortunately, the White Australia policy was nothing to be proud of. Anyway, having said all that, I commend Councillor Lu's motion. Did you want to say anything more, Councillor Lu?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I remember that the night of Friday, 29th of April, Mr. Mayor was opening this exhibition. Thank you for the time to do it, and I remember your speech on that, and I remember clearly the other professors who was doing that research, really addressing us in that inspection opening. And thank you, our fellow councillor Wen was there as well. So thank you so much to support that inspection. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that, Councillor. Now we have. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Yes, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against say no. I declare it. Passed unanimously. The next item on our agenda is the confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 26th of April 2022. Councillor Symington moves it, seconded by Councillor Jamieson. Thank you. Any discussion? No. All those in favour say aye. All those against say no. I declare it carried unanimously. The other thing that I'm going to go to now is the mayoral minute. And my mayoral minute, somewhere here, my mayoral minute, just bear with me, councillors. Somewhere in here. The Salvation Army Red Shield Appeal Business Breakfast, which was held on Friday the 13th of May 2022. The background to this is that in order to support the ongoing and long-standing commitment to the community, the Salvation Army conducted an annual Red Shield Appeal, and funds raised from this event will support services to the disadvantaged and marginalised, including victims of domestic violence, homelessness and drug dependency. The local organisation committee of the Red Shield Appeal hosted a business breakfast to kick-start this appeal. Recently retired New South Wales Police Commissioner Mick Fuller, PSM, was the guest speaker at the business breakfast. The event was also a great opportunity to catch up with other local business leaders. The breakfast was held on the 13th of May 2020, commencing at 7:30 at Club Central, Hurstville, and thanks to the generous support of Club Central, this $100 ticket price was donated directly to the Red Shield Appeal. Council purchased a table of 10 for $1,000 with the following councillors and staff attending in support. Myself, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Lansbury, and Councillors Jamieson, Marnie, Mort, Simonton, Konjowski, Stratokopoulos, Lou, Elmere, Green, Wayne, along with the Acting General Manager, David Tuxford, and Manager of City Technical Services, Tom Heath. Budgeted funds from council management meetings will be used to fund the $1,000 expenditure. I'd like also to pay credit to both Councillor Kevin Green and Councillor Ben Wang for being instrumental in organising the function. Councillor Green played a very entertaining and exceptional role as the Master of Ceremonies. I must admit, I really did enjoy the question and answer that Councillor Green had organised with the retired New South Wales Police Commissioner Mick Fuller, PSM. I thought that was quite entertaining and quite informative, and I appreciate that event during that time. So my motion is that Council endorse its commitment and involvement in the annual Red Shield Appeal Charity Breakfast held on Friday the 13th of May 2022. I move it. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Elmere. Did anyone want to speak to it? Councillor Green, did you want to say anything towards this? I think that would be probably appropriate since I mentioned the motion. Okay, fair enough. Does anybody else want to make any comments on this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Wang. Oh, you were mentioned too, but anyway.
I just want to thank every councillor attending that breakfast, especially Councillor Green. And this is this is not the first year or first time. So Councillor Green and I helped multiple sessions, and even this weekend. So we're going to have the door locking activity. So if anybody has time, can go into the street and donate the money for Salvation Army. So I will be there. Yeah. Thank you again.
Thank you, Councillor Wang. Now we go to condolence motion. Sorry, I'll move it there. Could I? I'll put it. Did you want to ask a question, Councillor?
Just add up a little bit about the.
What do you want to do?
I just try to add up a little bit because Councillor Wang still talking about the same topic about the Sogo's appeal. Yeah, and we are going to support that as well. I've been allocated a time at Westfield, Hurstville this weekend to do a little bit to add up. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no objections to the motion, I'll put it. All those in favour say aye. All those against say no. I declare it carried unanimously. And now we'll go to condolence motion. So has anybody got a condolence motion? Councillor Mort, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Catras. I've got a condolence for Lorna Harris. I'd like to offer my condolences to the family of Lorna Harris and her husband Bill. They were members. They were the original ladies and men, members of the original ladies and men swim club at Pembalance at Ramsgate. That's where the Coles supermarket is today. When the baths closed in 1970 and the ladies and men's swim club merged to form Ramsgate Amateur Swim Club in 1970 and moved to St. Susie Pool and later on to Cobble War Memorial Pool, Lorna served on this committee and later on the current club for many years, and only resigned to move to Taree to be closer to her family where she was a member of North Ramsgate Club, and a patron. She sadly passed away on the 17th of May at a nursing home in Taree. And on behalf of so many grateful friends and members of the swim club, I'd like to pass on our sincere condolences. She was a wonderful person. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mort. Any other condolences? Councillor Green. Microphone.
Thank you, councillors. I rise tonight to, in memory of a former mayor of Hurstville City Council, who sadly passed away on the 10th of May. I refer, of course, to, well, he wasn't a councillor, he was an alderman, because he was an alderman in the time before we had councillors. He was the mayor of Hurstville City Council from 1971 through to 1974. And of course, I refer to Alderman James Robert Walsh. Jim, to everyone who knew him, gave outstanding service to this local community, was first elected to Hurstville Council in 1970 in a by-election. In September 1971, became the mayor, and as I say, served for 3 years. And he served on council to 1977. From memory, I think in that last year was also in the role of deputy mayor. Jim Walsh raised 4 sons, 1 daughter. As I say, passed away at the age of 88. He was a Labor councillor, was a member of the Beverly Hills branch of the Australian Labor Party. Took over from memory from Mick Kaliza, who was, and then Mick actually, I think, followed Jim as well for another term as mayor. Mick was a Peakhurst ward councillor, and of course Jim was a Penshurst ward councillor. One of the things that it's worth noting he was the mayor at the time when the Penshurst branch library at Olds Park was open, which would have given him a lot of pleasure because, as I say, at that stage had 3 young children. In fact, he became mayor, I think he was about 37 at the time, so was raising a young family with his wife Barbara. While people may think that I'm standing because of my knowledge of Jim through the Labor Party, that is not in fact the case. In fact, I had a lot more to do with Jim and Barbara when they moved into the Peakhurst Lagano area, and members of the Our Lady of Fatima parish at Peakhurst, where they were great contributors in that community before most recently moving to Croydon, where they were living in the retirement village at Croydon. Jim's funeral last Thursday at I think it's St Francis's Church there at Ashbury was extremely well attended, and that of course is in recognition of not so much his community service but more the fact what a wonderful man he was, what a wonderful contributor to society, but most importantly just a really good human being, and as I say, in terms of this council, a great servant for about 7 or 8 years as an alderman on Hurstville City Council. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Are there any more condolences? No. Let's stand for a moment of silence, please. Thank you, Councillor. Now we go to committee reports. The first report is of the Environment and Planning Committee of the 9th of May. Councillor Lansbury.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. That's CTL 036-22, the report of the Environment and Planning Committee of 9th of May. I'll just move the report as it appears.
Thank you, Councillor Lansbury. I'll put that unless anybody has anything else to say. Who seconded it?
I'll second it.
Oh, Councillor Money, thank you. Moved by Councillor Lansbury, seconded by Councillor Money. All those in favour say yes.
Aye.
Aye. Yes, aye. All those against say no. No. I declare the motion carried. We're now going to report of the Finance and Governance Committee meeting held on the 9th of May 2022. Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I'd like to move items FIN 021-22 and FIN 022-22, noting that Council deferred item FIN 020-22, which was the instrument of delegation of functions to the General Manager. So just moving those 2 items as they appear in the report, please.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Jamieson. Any discussion on those? No. I'll put it. All those in favour say aye. All those against say no. I declare that carried unanimously, and we'll go to FIN 020-22, instrument of delegation of the General Manager. Councillor Ball.
Yes. Sorry, I thought we were going to the assets. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you to Mr Tuxford for arranging Dr Lindsay Taylor to be present at the committee meeting to answer a lot of the questions that myself and some of the other councillors had in that committee. I have been working on a revised instrument of delegation of functions of the General Manager. At this stage, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to move that the Council defer this motion to the June 22 Council meeting, just so all councillors can be briefed in a councillor workshop on what that proposed new instrument of delegation is. And then if we could bring that back in June.
Second that.
Moved by Councillor Bork, seconded by, I think it was Councillor Elmere. So who was? Council agreed, sorry. Is there any discussion on that? Well, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against say no. Declared carried unanimously. We now go to the report of the Assets and Infrastructure Committee. Councillor Symington.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move item ASS 013-2, the report of the Georges River Local Traffic Advisory Committee meeting 3rd of May 2022.
Could I have a seconder, please? Oh, seconded by Councillor Green. I'll put it. All those in favour say aye. All those against say no. The ayes have it, and I declare it carried unanimously. Report of the Community and Culture Committee meeting held on the 9th of May 2020. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're moving it? A seconder? Seconded by Councillor Almir.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Move it as printed in paper. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put it. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against say no. I declare it carried unanimously.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, just before you
Yes.
go on,
Sorry?
just to assist the minute taker with the previous motion, it was moved by Councillor Symington, seconded by Councillor Mort.
Councillor Mort.
Yeah, it's just to assist the minute
That's okay.
taker.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Now we go to the next item on the agenda, the finance and governance. It's the application pursuant to Council Board discretionary funds fund policy May 2020. Councillor Hawke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation that the applications for funding pursuant to the Councillor Ward Discretionary Fund as listed in the agenda be approved.
Second.
Seconded, moved by Councillor Hawke, seconded by Councillor Green. I can just see Councillor Green, that's why I got it this time. All those in, is there any discussion?
Sorry, can I just say something on that? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's okay, yeah.
Sorry, I'm not sorry. Councillors, I beg your indulgence for a second. I did note, and I thank Councillor Lansbury for this, I noted in those discretionary funds a contribution you've made to the St George District Amateur Athletic Club. And I think it's appropriate that Council, in making that contribution, recognises that while COVID had an impact last year, March 1921 was the year that St George Amateur Athletic Club started. And so they've celebrated 100 years of service to this community. And I think it's well worth making note of that. In fact, they had their first Olympic representative, and I'm testing my memory here, in about 1924, which would have been the Paris Olympics, when they had a walker, Mr. Mackin, E.W. Mackin, I think it was, who was the first representative in those Olympic Games. And most significantly, at the 1928 Olympic Games, Edie Robinson, who then became Edie Payne, was the first representative in the very first, what was considered distance event for women at the Olympic Games, that distance being 440 yards. Because prior to that, it was considered inappropriate for women to run so far. I'm making a rather sarcastic comment there, but Edie Robinson, the St George athlete, participated in that event. And I think it's a magnificent history of the club. Elaine Gainsford, who actually was an athlete in the very first year, 1921, gave over 60 years dedicated service to St George Athletic Club of their 100 years, a long-standing official with the club. And of course, we all remember one of the greats of our nation, Albie Thomas OAM, who sadly passed away probably 7 or 8 years ago now. Albie, of course, a St George athlete, again, contributed so much on the track, well, also off the track as an official with the club. People like Ron Grimble, Dennis Wilson, Dennis Jolliffe, all these people have made great contributions to St George athletics over that 100 years. And I think this district, in which we are such a significant part, has a wonderful sporting history. Obviously, St George Rugby League Club also started in 1921. And don't quote me on this, but I think St George Rugby Union, which is now part of Southern Districts, may have also started in 1921. That, of course, being just after the First World War, when this district was really growing and growing very quickly. And as I say, and of course, there was the Spanish flu pandemic after the war as well. So that 1921 significant year, but the contribution of St George Amateur Athletic Club, and again, I thank Councillor Lansbury for bringing this to notice tonight, because it is something that we should place on record. Okay, thanks.
Has anybody else want to address the council? Councillor Moore.
Can I just say thank you, Kevin? That was a great, great speech you gave on St George Athletics. I actually attended their event at Scarborough Park and met a lot of the older people there that still are very much involved with the club. And I thank Catherine Lansbury for using her discretionary award fund towards the club, because they greatly need the assistance. They also need to have a track somewhere within St George where we don't have any athletic tracks at all. Every school within in Georges River area just has to, for their athletic carnivals, has to go to Sylvania track. So I think maybe down the track, if we can look at getting a park where we can maybe map out some lanes for kids for their athletic carnivals and the like, it would be a good thing. But thanks for bringing this up, Catherine, and thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Has anybody else wanted to contribute to this discussion? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour will say aye. Aye. All those against say no. I declare it carried unanimously. And the next item on the agenda is the instrument of delegation to the Mayor. The emergency administrative provisions, April 2020 to May 2020 report. Do we have a move?
Move that way.
You moved, Councillor Green. Moved by Councillor Green. Can we have a seconder?
Seconded, Mr.
Seconded by Councillor O'Meara. Is there any discussion on this matter? As there's no discussion, I'll put it. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against say no. I declare the motion carried unanimously.
Did we miss the one on the? There's two.
Oh yes, sorry. There was one that I believe I've missed, and that's CCL 041-22, and it's administrative matter, execution of documents under delegated authority, 1st of April 2022 to 30th of April 2022. Do we have?
I'm happy to move it, Mr. Mayor.
So moved by Councillor Mayor, seconded by Councillor Green. Is there any discussion on this matter?
It was Councillor Ball, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sorry, it's Councillor Borg. Sorry, Councillor Borg. I apologise for that. Is there any discussion on this matter? No. Well, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against say no. I declare it carried. Now we go to the notices of motion. The first one is, oh sorry, the New South Wales Board elections, local government board elections, casual vacancy. Do we have a councillor board? Do we have a
yes,
number of people that are prepared to?
Mr. Mayor, I'm moving the motion with a slight amendment, which I provided to the staff, and the amendment is just that council nominate up to 9 voting delegates as listed below, with the names of the councillors who have raised their hands to become be put down as delegates to participate in the election to fill a casual vacancy on the Local Government New South Wales Board for the Office of Director. So if the council staff could just put up that the names, and then we can.
Yeah, I think we've got the names there. That's myself, Councillor Simonton, Councillor Ben Wang, Councillor Catherine Lansby, Councillor Elise Bork, Councillor Peter Marnie, and Councillor Natalie Moore. Do we have any others?
And Councillor Christina Jamieson
And
as well.
Councillor Christine Jamieson. Any more?
So that's 8. If anyone else would like to put their name down, then that.
If anyone wants to be added to the list? No? Well, we need a seconder. Who do we have as the seconder?
Second.
Okay, it's moved by Councillor Bork and seconded by Councillor Green. Is there any discussion? Is there no discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against say no. I declare it carried unanimously. We're now going to the notice of motion 40-22. Congratulations to Oatley Rugby Union for hosting the New South Wales Rugby Under-16 State Championship at Riverwood Park. Councillor Green, would you like to talk to it? Who's Councillor Green? You're moving it. Councillor Mayor, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the motion basically says all that needs to be said. The only thing I would add, let's hope it stops raining.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Green. I'll put it. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against say no. I declare the motion carried unanimously. We now go to personal education, prison traffic study. A report by Councillor Simon. It's moved by Councillor Symington. Seconded by.
I move it as read, Mr. Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Marnie. Did you want to talk to your motion, Councillor?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Councillors, as you would all be aware, there are multiple schools in this precinct and there are still ongoing safety issues. It extends from along Forest Road, from Croydon Road to Wright Street. Thousands of school students walk and ride to these schools daily, and the principals of these schools are still very concerned, along with the parents, for the safety of the children. There have been a lot of improvements, and since the recommendations of the BISIOS 2017 traffic study were conducted. But since the report was undertaken in 2017, there's been a significant increase in the traffic volumes, with cars and trucks running through our local roads to avoid tolls. This has increased the risk to students, bearing in mind that road trauma is the #1 cause of deaths of children. The reality is we need to manage the situation so we can keep our children and community safe. By August, works should have commenced on the Durham Street and Forest Road traffic lights, which once finished will formalise pedestrian movements and hopefully slow down the traffic. There are also proposed improvements for the Forest Road and Lily Street the intersection, sorry, had a mental block. It makes perfect sense that Georges River Council commissions a new traffic study to get a clearer picture of what is actually happening in relation to the increased volumes of traffic and the effectiveness of the traffic improvements, and to identify any other ways that can make the area safer. Councillors, for your information, we weren't included. That area was not, it didn't meet the criteria to be included in the 30-kilometre trial, but there is a possibility of a local traffic area scheme, 40-kilometre zones, as it's been implemented in the Cogra town centre. And I know of another one in Newtown. I'm sure there's a lot more, but that's something that the traffic study could possibly suggest. I want to also take this opportunity to thank all the council officers who have been involved in implementing the recommendations from the 2017 traffic study. And in particular, I want to single out now Tom Heath, who's the Manager of Technical Services, and Henry, who are now responsible for the current works and improvements in this precinct. I ask you to support this motion because it's a very, very important one. We can't take safety lightly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simon. Councillor Money, did you want to say as a seconder? Councillor Wang, did you want to say something? Yeah.
Yes, I'd like to second that, if you don't mind, Peter. Yeah. So because I used to live on Wright Street and my son grew up in that area, so I know that area very well. In addition to the traffic study and all the background Councillor Simon mentioned, I just want to add a few points. One is there are quite a few high-rise development around that Durham Street near the Comfield Park. So that will cause increase the population and increase the school kids, and obviously it will pose the actual risk to the traffic and everything. And the other thing I want to mention is, sadly, there were several fatal traffic accidents nearby, one at the Durham Street, the other near at the cross of Lily Street and Forest Road, just 2 years ago. So it has a huge traumatic impact on the community. So aiming for the study, especially given we didn't have a major upgrade or implementation of safety measures recently. So this motion is long overdue. So I request all the council to consider and support this motion. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wang. Does anyone have anything else to add or object to the motion? Okay, I'll put it. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against say no. I declare the motion carried unanimously. And we'll now go on to the e-scooter trial in Georges River Council. A report by Councillor Smurton. Councillor Smurton, do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Elmere.
Thank you. I ask council to support this motion tonight, as I believe it's in our best interest as a council to participate in this shared e-scooter trial. Recently, I went to Adelaide, and I was with fellow councillors from Wollongong City Council and Shoalhaven City Council, and on our business throughout the day, we went around Adelaide CBD using these e-scooters, and I found that a 25-minute, 30-minute walk would take a couple of minutes, right? So it was actually very convenient for all of us. All you had to do was use the app on your phone. It was called Neuron, and what you would do is scan the QR code, and all of a sudden you're allowed to use this e-scooter. And I believe the technology is great. It's GPS tracked with speed regulated in high foot traffic areas, and it's restrictive on where you can park. So it restricts where you can dump them if there are people that just want to throw them away. And if you leave the no-go zone, the engine automatically turns off. I believe participating in this trial that the Minister, Rob Stokes, has announced in July this year will allow us as an LGA to work out where this e-scooter trial may be most appropriate, but also it'll allow us to work out where the best networks for these scooters, which will inevitably be regulated in New South Wales, in my humble opinion. And it will also allow us to feasibly look at all the capacity of the locations in which the state trial is, if the state trial is proven successful. It would also, in my view, reduce parking issues that we have near railway stations, but also around our town centres. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smurdy. Councillor Mayor, did you want to talk to this? Thank you.
No.
Okay. Do we have any objections to that?
I'd like to object to it. I've got quite a few concerns about e-scooters. We allow the ones that Councillor Smurley's talking about. Can we then, or will that lead into allowing the smaller scooters that are available for kids to ride, that are like little motorbikes, and people have their own electronic scooters that they go everywhere around our LGA and cause major problems where they don't wear helmets, and there's all sorts of issues that can come about with it. I think that they don't wear helmets. That there's no lights on these things. They can weave in and out of traffic, which is great if you're looking for a bit of time. But I don't think they're very well suited to our LGA. I think they're more a city thing where they're in more controlled, where people are getting from A to B instead of where all these kids are going to be just going here, there, and everywhere. So thank you.
I'll take another in opposition to
Mr. Mayor, could I make a contribution? Sorry, I can't hear. Nick, is your microphone on?
Can we turn on?
Sorry.
Yeah.
I can't hear you.
Can you
Mr.
hear
Mayor.
me now?
Yes, that's better. Yep, sorry. Can I make a contribution?
Yeah.
Thank you. Look, I'd like to speak in favour of Councillor Smerdley's motion. As we've all come to see with the crazy weather that we've had so far this year and over the last couple of years, with flooding rains and bushfires becoming all the more intense, what we need is a new way to get around that doesn't involve cars. We need a way to encourage everyone in our community, not just kids, but everyone to find new methods of mobility, to find new ways of moving around that are based on electricity and not fossil fuels. And these scooters, while I agree with Councillor Mort, are not the entire solution. They're not going to suit everyone, and they're not going to be appropriate in every circumstance, but that's why we're running these sorts of trials. This is why it is incumbent upon governments around the world to find what does work and find how it can best work. They've certainly already learnt a lot of lessons from these trials, both in Australia and around the world. And while the way that we use them and regulate them at the moment works, as Councillor Mort points out, in cities, we need to find out how we can make them work in suburban areas like ours. We need to find ways that these sorts of mobility options can be available here, that can work here. And so I think it is incumbent upon us to do everything we can to support our environment and to support our local residents as best we can, and make these sorts of options available for them, and do everything we can to make sure that when the regulations are made, that they are as suitable as appropriate as possible for our part of Sydney. So I'd like to support the motion.
I've had 2 people speak for. I've had 1 against. I'll take 1 against.
I actually
Is anyone speaking against?
I had a question.
I'll question by all means.
So I'm not quite sure who to ask that, but I'll go through you.
The director.
Is it Andrew again? Sorry, I'm going to ask you a question. I just had a whole heap of questions. So it says specifically what area. Are we going to go throughout the whole GA? Like, are we going to go through a ward, or how's it actually going to pan out? Oh, I've got heaps of them too.
Mr. Mayor, that would be determined as part of the scope of the trial. So there hasn't been any predetermined area defined at this stage, Councillor Jamieson. But as part of scoping out any sort of trial, we'd be looking at, where we're actually going to run this, how we're going to look up or how we're actually going to address some of the safety concerns that are raised by Councillor Mort as well. So all of those will come out in the scoping.
Thank you, Mr. Lardy. Councillor Moore.
Yeah, sorry, I'm still going. And these e-scooters, is the council going to be providing, or how's that part going to work?
Mr. Latta, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, again, that final detail hasn't been decided, although the models that they're actually basing it off at the moment, it's a third-party provider. The third-party provider would provide the scooter, and then they also engage a third party for collection and return as well. So it appears that trials in other areas have suggested that it would be sort of an arm's length arrangement that council would have access to.
So another question, what costs would it be to the council? Would it be any cost, or?
Mr. Mayor, I'd have to take that on notice. We haven't sort of got to the point of actually costing it out at this stage.
Thank you, Mr. Latta. Any further questions, Councillor Jamieson?
No, I think with that, with that information, I would have to. Well, if without having that information, I'd have to go against the motion.
But you just want to speak against it because I'm taking addresses against.
Yes. So
because we've had one against.
Yes. So that
I'll take another against, and then we can go. I'll take another 4 and against after this, and then.
So I'd just like to say that I actually like the idea. However, I'm concerned. I am concerned about the cost to the council, and I'm happy for another council to do it, and we can take on board and any other recommendations from it, so it's not at a cost necessarily to us. And also, I'm also concerned specifically with the Mortdale ward. I've just had so many complaints about the current works that are happening now and the safety issues. I just feel that they probably wouldn't be very happy if we did it in the Mortdale ward. And I've also had complaints that we're sort of, they're concerned being that, doing the, being experimental, like things like affordable housing to test it out on Mortdale. So I just get the feeling, and I hope I'm doing the right thing by my constituents, that it's probably not the preferred thing to do it in that area at this point in time.
Thank you, Councillor Jamieson. I'll take 1-4, and that's you, Councillor Mayor.
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't think that I would need to get up and speak in favour of this, given that it's a opportunity to write to Transport for New South Wales to see whether we can participate in their trial period. Let's make it very clear in terms of the motion, it's Council's interest to participate in the trial period. Now, the thing from the state government was open for councils across New South Wales to make a submission to see whether councils would be interested in this. And given that we have been working on a number of policies over the last few years in trying to activate or create more active transport modes throughout our city, I thought that this would be a great opportunity, given that there is a significant change in the technology that's around, but also the reliance that we will need from the data collected from those. So there is a lot of data that we need to collect. It is also something that, we used to ride bikes when we were younger. Now there's all types of things. There's, we used to have skateboards. Now there's, e-scooters, there's e-boards, there's all these different modes of transport. And I think if we were to create a city that is interlinked, easy to navigate, we need to start preparing for the technology that is coming through. And I think that this is a great opportunity to find out. Now, I don't think that in terms of the cost and all that, that would definitely be coming back to us to find out whether there is any added costs to council or whether there is any obligation on council to provide more things. And obviously we wouldn't be able to proceed unless we actually approve those things. But let's write into the department. Let's ask for council, given the policies that we've already adopted, to see whether council would qualify to be able to participate in this shared e-scooter trial program. And if we do qualify, then that's great. Let's also remember that New South Wales is also, I'm pretty sure it's the last state in Australia to adopt e-scooter trial and e-scooters in their cities. These have been going around in Victoria, in other places, in Queensland. This is where you start to find out what works, what doesn't work, and then how you can apply regulation through the legislation of what permits people to have e-scooters around, how they can ride them, where they can ride them, whether you create different paths for them. But this is the way of the future, and I think we need to look beyond that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elmer. Councillor Leslie speaking against it.
Mr. Mayor, I just actually had a question for the Director, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Director, Mr. Latter. It's in relation to expressing an interest. I mean, the intent of the motion is to write to Transport New South Wales to express an interest, which we wouldn't actually be locked into. A report, I'm assuming, would be coming back to us as a council with the pros and cons of being involved in a situation like this. Is that correct? So basically, the council will have an opportunity whether to proceed with it or not. It's yes?
Yes, so through you, Mr. Mayor, the intent was to participate in the trial. The reason that there's no financial implications associated with the report or the notice of motion as it stands is because there won't be any financial implications until we actually commit to it longer term. So what we're looking at the moment is a trial to see whether it's actually I guess, appropriate for the different areas across the LGA. Once that's determined, a further report will come back to council.
Thank you, Mr. Laddell. I'll take one more against. Councillor.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Ball, is that?
Yeah. Yes, so I just have a question. Just more in regards to the process, following on from Councillor Lansbury's questioning. We're expressing an interest to participate in the trial, but I think the Director just said we will, if we get approved, we will go ahead. At what point will there be a report that identifies how council will be addressing the issues of safety around the requirement of helmets, speed limits, where you can ride on, if it's on footpaths or on roads, and how that would be enforced and how that would be, you know, measured. When would we see that information? Because that's the sort of, they're the concerns I have. I'm happy to proceed with the trial, but I would like to know, is it going to be after the trial or before the trial where councillors will be able to review that sort of information?
Mr. Latter.
Mr. Mayor, that's a really good point. I believe that we could provide information or further information regarding the safety implications of the trial to councillors through a briefing session or the like. They are pretty prescriptive in terms of what they're proposing as part of the trial. So things like helmets, for example, you can't ride one of these things without a helmet. The helmet is actually attached. In terms of speed limits around different zones, it actually is it's zoned by GPS. So I think it was around 8 kilometres an hour as the maximum speed where you've got pedestrian areas, and then as you move outside of that, the speed gradually increases.
And so is that enforced by technology as opposed to you need people to enforce the rules? Is that how it works? The technology restricts the speed?
Mr. Mayor, yes, that is the case. So the technology actually drives all of the safety, I guess, safety issues or concerns that may have been raised.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Latter. Yeah, by all means, Councillor Moore.
To Andrew Latter, thank you. Just wondering if we go to this trial, and does it leave it open then for these general public to buy these e-scooters and just use them around their area, or will that be illegal?
Mr. Latter.
Mr. Mayor, no, they're easily identifiable, and there is a process to actually book these. The ones that people are buying in the open market are very different to the scooters that we're actually suggesting we trial as part of this particular notice of motion.
Okay, because my only concern is that it's going to open up a Pandora box. You know, if we go ahead with this trial. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if there's no, are you speaking against, Councillor? Yeah, Councillor Lansbury.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Well, I appreciate that it is just to express an interest. I mean, my overriding concern with it is there's not enough information before us to really, I know we're not committing to it 100% tonight, but expressing an interest without really that much information as to safety factors. I'm pleased to know from Director Latter that the scooters you have to wear a helmet to use the scooter. As we all know, it's all fun and games until someone gets hurt, and these sorts of devices are great fun in the right location, but they'd have to be pretty strictly regulated and monitored. And I don't know about you guys, but I all remember when we had that share bike scheme that took over the city, and there were just dumped share bikes everywhere. And that's one of the first things, sorry, Councillor Smurley, that came to my mind was with these e-bikes. And I'm quite sure they're a lot more expensive to hire than one of the share bikes are. But, you know, they didn't work well in the end. They're very few and far between now, as opposed to when the whole city was overtaken by them. People are going to ride them on the footpaths, which is going to be hazardous for pedestrians. I think in the ACT, they're trialling them there. They've got shared pathways. They've probably got the right sort of setup. I don't know that we've got the right sort of setup in our LGA. We don't really have bike tracks on roads, you know, like the City of Sydney and other LGAs. We have mostly footpaths or the road, and I guarantee you people will use the footpaths and people will get hurt. So, you know, maybe I'm just being a wowser, but just from my own experience of being nearly taken out many, many times during lockdown when people rode their push bikes on the footpath, regardless of the fact that they were for pedestrians, I can just see this happening. If they were restricted to CBD areas that had the right sort of access for them, that's all well and good. But I don't know, I just am not sure that I would want to go any further with this without any more real detailed information on how it would work and where we'd be considering doing it. Thanks.
I'll take questions and clarification. So that's it.
Yeah. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question I have follows on from the Deputy Mayor's discussion is if we vote this through, will we have an opportunity to actually have an informed decision. At this point in time, it's an informed and it's an intention. But if we vote this through now, will we have a point of actually getting more information, or should we defer the trial? Is this actually just the interest, or will we have an opportunity? Yeah.
Mr Mayor, at this point, I believe that the notice of motion is really just requesting that we write to Transport for New South Wales to participate. There's nothing really committing us to that trial longer term. If councillors were to decide at a later date that they didn't want to participate, or they wanted to limit the trial to certain areas within the local government area.
Thank you, Mr. Do you stay here? Councillor Green might have a question.
Yeah, I do. I actually, a point of clarification. So we're just confirming this is not us running a trial. This is Transport for New South Wales running a trial, which we, through this, would like to participate in restricted areas within our LGA, chosen by us in consultation with Transport for New South Wales. And I'm sure you've got that on board, so I'll then move to the second part, is also confirming that the technology that Transport for New South Wales are so far promoting as part of their trial process, that technology is GPS constrained, meaning that you can only, because of the GPS, it's a bit like golf carts and those carts they use around Hamilton Island and places like that, will only go at a certain speed in certain areas. And in fact, if you get to an area where you are not allowed to go, e.g. a footpath or other specific areas, the machine will actually stop because of the GPS. So Transport for New South Wales running a trial with all the technology, all the safety. All we'd be doing is being a participant if they allow us. And also the third part is, if we put this expression of interest in and are chosen and find before the trial starts that we suddenly realise that in the scope that is provided to us by Transport New South Wales, having been chosen, we can then at that stage still withdraw. Sorry, there's three parts to all that, but I'll just put it all together.
You might have to remind us.
Mr Mayor, the answer to part one, I think you've already answered that, Councillor Green, in your question. In terms of part two, technology is actually quite well advanced. I think there was a comment made previously that, you know, we're not the pioneers. New South Wales is not the pioneers. This technology has been used quite broadly across Australia and in different countries across the world. So we are sort of testing the waters to see whether this technology is actually suitable for our local government area and whether the safety implications associated with this suit our particular demographic. The third part of the question is, yes, we can actually withdraw at any point. There's nothing committing us to this trial moving forward if at a later date council decided it wasn't something that they wanted to be involved in.
Thank you, Mr. Ladden. Now,
Mr. Mayor, can I please propose an amendment which is in line with Councillor Green's comments just now? Could I request that we make an amendment part B, that if council's expression of interest is accepted, that a report be provided to council with further information on the technology and safety requirements before council implement the trial? If the mover would be happy to consider accepting that amendment.
Councillor Smedley, you happy to?
Yes, I accept that.
Councillor O'Neill, you accept. Okay, that's accepted. If the amendment becomes the motion, as I said, I'll only accept questions and clarification at this stage.
Would you like me to read that?
Councillor Smedley has his right as well. Sorry? Oh, could you repeat that slowly, Councillor?
Sorry, yeah. That if council's expression of interest is accepted,
hold on.
that a report be provided to council with further information on the technology and safety requirements before council implement the trial.
Again, are you happy with that, Councillor Smurtley? Okay. And Councillor Mayor?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Smurtley, you have the right of reply. Thank you.
I just want to reiterate the point that from my experience using the app Neuron, you would have to scan the QR code, and for you to actually get onto the e-scooter and start the engine, you'd have to actually clip your helmet on. So it actually has that safety element there. Plus, the regulation of the scooter stopped me on a Friday night from going into a high foot traffic area. Plus, it also regulated our speed limit to, I think, about 12 kilometres per hour, which is just a fast running pace. So that's
you, Councillor Smurtley. I will put the motion, but I think we're going to have to go around the room, considering that we have some that objected to the motion.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I'll take your vote first.
I'm for it.
Councillor Borg.
For the motion.
Councillor Elmere.
For the motion.
Councillor Green.
For the motion.
Councillor Jamieson.
For the motion.
Councillor Lansbury.
For.
Councillor Liu.
For, thank you.
Councillor Marnie.
For.
Councillor Mort.
Against.
Councillor Smurtley.
For.
Councillor Stratokopoulos.
For.
Councillor Sinington.
For.
Councillor Tegg.
For the motion.
Councillor Wang.
For the motion.
That's 13 votes for, 1 against.
I declare the motion carried. We'll go to the next item on the agenda. It's Councillor Superannuation Contributions, which is a report by Deputy Mayor Councillor Lansbury. Councillor Lansbury, would you like to move?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll move the motion as it appears on the business paper.
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Marnie. Did you want to discuss this, Councillor?
Oh, just briefly, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think this came into effect last year when the state government provided for it, and councillors have never been entitled to superannuation payments previously. And contrary to probably what many people in the community think, councillors are not really that well compensated for the amount of work that they do from time to time. And there are other local, our neighbouring councils, I think, have actually agreed to proceed with it. I'm pretty ambivalent, to be honest with you. I'd like to see a report on what the financial implications would be for our council before we committed to it. But, you know, I think it's certainly worth considering because, you know, where councillors are paid an allowance for their time, but unlike most other sources of income, there wasn't until last year the capacity for councillors to receive superannuation unless they chose to pay that separately themselves. So, no, it's just worth getting a report. Thank you.
Councillor Marnie, did you want to speak for this?
No, thank you.
No? Is anyone objecting to the motion? As no one is objecting to the motion, I'll put it. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against say no. There's 13 for, I gather, and 1 against. Yeah, sorry. Okay, well, I still declare the motion carried. Now, the next item is questions on notice. As I indicated in the past, I do have a pecuniary interest, and I'm taking on the housing targets. It's a report by Councillor Marnie. I'm still going to keep to my policy of that I won't accept any discussions on question on notice. And my assumption is that the answers to the questions are there for your reading. Unless you have further questions, then you won't be heard. So I know this is a very simple matter, but I have declared a pecuniary, and the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Lansbury, would like to come up. I'll just in case Councillor Marnie has more questions. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, councillors. Now we're dealing with the question with notice 020-22 housing targets. Councillor Marnie, did you have any further questions on that?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Marnie. I think we can call the mayor back in. Could someone please bring him back in and he can. Hmm?
Second.
No, we don't move them. Yeah. No, we don't receive the note questions with notice anymore. Mm. Mm.
No, comfortable with the response.
Sorry, do you have any questions on the investigation into the Georges River councillors? Right. Now we need to
I move
procedural motion.
Mr. Mayor, that we go into closed session.
Sorry. Oh, you the procedural motion to go into closed session. Okay, well, we'll have a procedural motion moved by Councillor Elmier, seconded by Councillor Lansbury. I'll just go. So we adopt the resolutions from closed session that the committee of the whole. This meeting. No. Well, we'll go into closed session in accordance with the Local Government Act, and the one that's been there's one that's been withdrawn, and that was the question by Councillor Jamieson, and we'll only be dealing with Councillor Teggs. So maybe we can take a 5-minute break while all the systems are rebooted.
Just a point of order. I think we
yes.
go through the public speakers to ask if there's any public speakers before we go.
Oh yes, thank you, Councillor.
Sorry,
Councillor. Thank you very much. Are there any public speakers that have an objection to Councillor considering these? The councillors considering these matters in closed session. No, fine. So we'll move into closed session, but in accordance with Section 10A, Clause 2 of the Local Government Act, Council to enter into closed session to discuss legal expenses and it's a staff matter. That's it. Yeah, well, I was supposed to get ready. Accordingly, members of the press and public are excluded from the closed session, and access to the correspondence report relating to the items considered during the course of this closed session will be withheld. I will ask the General Manager if there have been any written representations objecting to from the public. No. A procedural motion is required. That was moved by Councillor Elmier and seconded by Councillor Lansbury, if my memory serves. I'll put it. All those in favour say aye. All those against say no. I declare the motion carried. And I think while we're setting up, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Meeting. You're right. Thank you, councillors. We've just finished the closed session. It was only a question on notice. We don't need a motion, and all the questions in the confidential sections were answered. So I declare the meeting closed at 9:36, and I bid you all good night. Good night to the council officers, and good night to those that are on webcast. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Party hard, leave.